What's good, guys? CyberMage here, and today we are going to be doing Infiltrate GCP via web app exploitation. So the scenario is our team has landed a new engagement. The global retailer client has provided us with a list of IP addresses mapped to their deployed prod and dev applications. These applications are currently accessible from any of their 2000 store locations. You are currently assessing the IP 3520891.212 in scope in the application and any other resources. In scope is the application and any other resources and environments owned by the client that you are able to access. So we have an IP address. Let's go ahead and check if there's any websites that we can access. I'm just going to paste the IP address. And we see that directory listing is enabled for this website. And there is an inventory directory. We can click this. And we are presented with a login page. We can use our WAP analyzer plugin over here, and we can see that it's using PHP. The operating system is Debian, and the web server is Apache HTTP server. So yeah, walkthrough goes through brute forcing this, but I usually don't like brute forcing in the beginning because it's very unlikely that you're going to find anything, a username or password that is going to be correct, unless you have some type of information to go off of. So first things first, let's review the source code. We do find these JavaScript files here, but there's probably nothing in there. We know that it's going to log in PHP and it's sending a post request after we input our username and password over here. And there's nothing really else. This CSS file, just nothing important for us. And yeah, let's go ahead and see if there's any other directories available for us. So we can do buff, and we can use this extension .sql. Um, I would say this is the most tricky part because people don't usually check for this extension. I usually do is .php, or actually let me zoom in as well. I would usually do .php, so .php. I would also do .html, but in this case it has a unique extension that we're going to have to use, which is .sql. And I'm using the common.txt, which is one of the word lists that I normally use. And let's go ahead and fuzz this. And we find this backup.sql. We also find this admin over here. But let's go ahead and check out what admin is. And really nothing. So we can just check out backup.sql now. And we have this file here that was downloaded. Let's go ahead and open this. And we're giving the database pretty much over here. We have some information over here as well. Seems to be data for table products. We have a sales table over here, it seems. And we also have a table for users. So we have this hash, this hash, this hash. If you guys are confused on what hash to use, you can just copy this and use a tool such as hash identifier, paste in the hash, and it will give a list of possible hashes, right? So the most possible hashes is MD5 and this one over here, and the least possible ones are this. You could also use, let me escape from this. We can also do hash, what's it called? Hash ID, and paste this here. And it can also give us a list of possible hashes. We're going to follow this output over here where it says MD5, and that's what we're going to use. We're going to create a file called hash.txt, and we're going to put all the hashes that we found for these users. So admin, let's copy this here. Let's go with user now. Perfect. And we're going to do hashcat, and the mode that we're going to use is 0, which is for MD5. We can go ahead and do hash.txt, and we have to specify a word list which it will use to crack the password. And in this case, user share word list, I think it's rockyou.txt. And there we go. It's going to go ahead and try to guess the password for these users. And this takes a while, so I'm going to pause the video, and when it's done, I'll resume it. All right, it is done, and we see that we cracked one of the hashes, starting with F7, and the password is retail123. And if we look over here, F7 belongs to the user named user. So let's go ahead and log in with this user. And another thing I want to mention is, you see how enumerating would be better rather than actually just starting off with brute forcing. Brute forcing takes a while, and in some scenarios, if you do have some type of information, such as a username or password hint, like a password policy or something like that, it might be good to start brute forcing right away and just keep that scan running in the back. But yeah, it really depends on the situation. But I normally don't start brute forcing until I have some information to go off of and I've enumerated everything completely. Yeah, just some basic stuff. So let's go ahead and log in. And what I normally like to do is browse as a normal user. And while I am browsing as a normal user, I like to keep burp running in the background. So we're going to go ahead and run burp. And all the requests that we use is going to be saved in burp. So let's go to HTTP history. Oops. HTTP history. This is where all the requests are going to be saved. Before we do that, we have to make sure our Firefox is able to send requests to burp. So we're going to use this tool called Foxy Proxy, and we're going to enable this setting over here. And what this does is it sends the request to 8080 first, which is our proxy burp. If you go to proxy settings here, you can see that the burp listener or burp proxy uses listeners to receive incoming HTTP requests. So we have to set this proxy to this interface pretty much. I'm actually going to go ahead and show you the settings as well for that. Why not? Options, proxies, and there we go. Name burp, the host name, and port 8080, and type HTTP. So yeah, that is pretty much it over there. We have this set to burp. We refresh it. You can see we did get this over here. Let's go ahead and add things to cart. So we can add this to cart. Clicking this, different types of things, history, my cart, checkout. Whoops, let's close this. And yeah, we can also add another one if we want, or remove one. Okay, remove it from here. Strange. Some of these are not working. And we did get this error here somehow that says insert command denied for user this and whatever. So it seems that it's making an SQL command. It's doing an SQL command, an insert command, but our current user that it's using, which is POS user, is unable to do these type of actions. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at burp and see what type of request we have right now. So we have this check one. This seems something that we might want to check out. So let's send this to repeater. We have this minus cart one. Let's send this to repeater. Delete product. This seems interesting as well. And we also have this add to cart one over here, which we did earlier. It's the second request shown in number 2. So in the lab, they actually use minus cart.php. We don't really need to use this. We can go ahead and actually use it with the original add cart request. So let's go ahead and play with these parameters here. And I'm going to use a single quote to see if we can find an SQL error or some type of error that occurs to give us an indication that, hey, SQL injection is possible. So let's send this request and we do get an error. Normally, if we did it without this, it would show us that product already um, on your cart pretty much. So yeah, this means that it's possible to do SQL injection over here. So at this point, let's try to find out the number of columns in this, to do this SQL injection pretty much. We have to get the number of columns. And there's two ways to do this. It's going to be kind of a bit more complicated. SQL injection is complicated and a lot of people do struggle with it. Um, so yeah, the two ways to do it is by means of order by and union. So this is just to find the number of columns. Later on, we can start querying the database using union type injection. But first, we need to find out the number of columns to do that with. For example, the reason why we want the number of columns is to make sure that when we use our union command over here, this is just an example I'm giving, that the number of columns here, which is 4, has to match the database or the table that we're querying, or yeah, pretty much. So I like to use the order by one method. It's much more easier, and you're gonna see how it's like right now. So I'm gonna remove the spaces and put a plus over here. This is pretty much just URL encoding. And order by one, it's ordering by the first column, I believe. I'm not a pro at SQL injection. It is pretty much difficult for me as well, but I have an idea of how to do it. So over here, we're commenting everything out and we're trying to order this by one. And let's see if we get an error or not. We don't get an error. So that means there is one column. Let's go ahead and do 2. There is 2 columns. Okay. Let's go ahead and do 3. There is 3 columns. 4. There is 4 columns. 5. It gave us an error. So in order by method, the last successful attempt that we did, which is number 4, that is the number of columns that exist. Yeah, unknown columns, 5 in order by. So now at this point, I would take a union command, the union command union plus select. I'll just copy paste this over here. So this union select, I'm just gonna copy this up to here now. Perfect. Plus this. So what we are trying to do right now is, I'm also going to change this to no. This should not give us an error because we notice that when we don't use SQL injection, or it actually works out, But when we do implement it, we get an error pretty much. So what we're going to try to do is which of these columns we can get a value from, which is printed to us. It seems kind of difficult to do because every time there seems to be a successful injection example, right? Like the order by 4 or 3 that we did, we don't get anything in return. But let's see what happens if we go through this with version this. It's going to try to inject this into one of the columns. So the first column. And nothing was returned. Okay. What about this? Nothing. All right then. Nothing. And nothing. So it seems like everything, we're not getting anything reflected back to us. That's what it pretty much seems. What I'm going to try to do now, I'm going to put null here. Null here. Is I'm going to try to see if I could input this to a file and then get the output for this version command that I'm trying to run. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to put this here, copy this. We're trying the first column null, 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 and into file var www.html version.txt. And the way that we got this root directory over here, how we found the web root, is from the SQL error that we got. If we go back a couple, just gonna copy this in case. We can see here that we have var www html. So we know that the web direct root is over here, and then we have inventory user where we are pretty much. But yeah, the web root is this. Yeah. So we're injecting or we're putting a file called version.txt over here. Let's see if it works. And we did get an error that says that argument one type. Uh, So we got an error over here, SQL number rows, argument one result must be type. It seems like it wants a Boolean type over here, and our version is going to give like a string output. But let's see if this actually worked out or not. So we're going to use this curl command. And it did work out. So meaning our injection did work over here. And we can see it's in the first column over here. If you put it at the end, these are the columns. So first column, second column, third column, fourth column. If you put it in number 4, it's going to be inserted over here. So it is working apparently. Yeah, that is pretty cool. So what we can do now is in the lab, it did go through putting a shell. We can use this command here to input this type of PHP web shell into this file, and then we would get pretty much command injection. This type of technique really depends on the user, the POS underscore user, SQL user that we saw before, whether it has permissions to actually do this or not. So yeah, uh, we're gonna put our PHP file and we're putting into manual.php. And the reason why we're using PHP is because, as you remember from our WAPalizer over here, the programming language this web application uses is PHP. So let's go ahead and send this request. And we just got an OK. Let's go and see if this actually worked or not. So curl manual underscore shell.php cmd equals id. And it did not work for some reason. You can select to. Yeah, that is fine. Into file. I'm just going to call this manual.php. Could be the underscore that's causing the issue. Shall execute get cmd. Into file. That is strange. This is supposed to be working. I'm going to go ahead and try a different column. It's giving us things without any error. So we're going var to. So it's just not uploading. That's the issue. Into strange. I think I'm doing this over here. Yeah. Oh, well, this wasn't really how I did it anyways. I did it a different way, but I thought I would show you guys how to do it via what the walkthrough was going what the walkthrough was telling. Kind of strange how this is not working right now. But we can do the exact same thing in a different method, and I'm going to get to that, which is kind of my own method. I think it's probably going to be easier than, well, it's definitely easier than this. Um, but I do want to figure this out, to be honest, why this is not working. I'm actually going to pause the video. I know I get like curious on these type of things and it could take me a while. I'm going to pause the video, play around with it, and figure this out right now. So be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I made actually a very stupid mistake, and that's the reason why it didn't work. So this command over here is from the walkthrough, and because of that, the walkthrough uses a different area where it was exploiting. It was using the remove add to cart. Let me remember what it was using. It was using this minus cart PHP post request, and that's why it has this min equals 1. We're using a different place called add underscore cart, and because of that, I was not supposed to use min equals 1, and I changed this back to the original one and inputted that command, and we got the error and it worked. So yeah, that is one way of doing it. I'm going to do a different method now, which is much more easier, and that is with using SQL map. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go back to the original request, remove all of this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put this in a file called request.txt. Paste this here. We're going to run SQL map. The R is going to be the request, and it's request.txt. P is going to be the parameter that we want to try the injection on, ID. And over here, we're just going to put OS shell for us to get a shell on the OS. We're just going to press enter, and it's going to try to do that. We can press 4 over here. I've actually already done all of this, right? That's why it's already giving me the stored session and the injection that it found. But when you go through it, it's going to start to actually manually try to use different types of payloads. So in those type of requests, just make sure to press yes, 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 and it should eventually get the payloads that will work. So now that we're doing, we have all the payloads. It knows that it's exploitable through error-based, Boolean-based blind, and time-based blind. We can go ahead and write for PHP, because that's the web application language that it's using. And we notice that they all pretty much fail. And if you look at the output, we see var ww, it's trying to put it over here, or that's what it assumes is the web server's document root, which is incorrect. We notice it's trying here in different areas, right? But it's never really trying in var ww html. So it seems like our user doesn't have write access to these locations, but it might have, or it does have access to var ww html that we actually noticed before, right? So we can go ahead and try to add this web root and directly tell SQL map, hey, this is the web root, and try this location instead. So you press enter here, press 4 for PHP. You want to try the same method used for file stager. Let's just say yes. And we do get an OS shell now. So in this case, we can just do gcloud auth print access token to get the service account access token that's attached to this VM, and actually backtrack. If you guys don't know whether this is using a Google Cloud VM or not, all you have to do is who is the IP address, and we can go here and notice that it says Google Cloud. So that's one of the ways that we can find out. So yeah, we're going to use gcloud auth print access token to get the access token of the service account attached to this VM. You want to retrieve the command standard output, yes. And we notice that it's not able to actually do this. So permission denied over here. What we can do now is we can actually use a curl command to directly try to get this. First, let's see the email account of the service account attached to this. Yes. And we do have one called POS inventory. Let's go ahead and try to get the access token of this. And we're using default over here. I believe you can only have one service principal attached to a VM. So there's either going to be default or this account email that we can use. So I'm just using default, retrieve standard command output, and we do have the token. I'm going to go ahead and check, remove this, and try it with this over here. Paste. And we do get the access token. So let's copy this and put this in a variable called access token. Perfect. Let's now exit this. So another way we can do this is this method over here. So SQL map R for the request parameter ID file write. We're going to take a file that we have saved called shell.php and we're going to directly try to write it to this location over here. If I do ls, I do have a shell.php here, shell.php, and here it is. And I'm going to go ahead and do this command. Do you want confirmation that the local file has been successfully written on the back end? Sure, why not? And there we go. Let's go ahead and curl this to confirm. And instead of manual underscore PHP, we're just doing shell.php, which is the file that we put. And we do get the output. We can do ls and we can see shell.php. We got this. And we got these two files here in the version.txt that we put before. So yeah, that is pretty much it. We got the access token now. And let's go ahead and go to opt GCP amp. Now we can use the GCP perm checker. It's going to start brute forcing all the permissions that this token has. I'm also going to remove token.txt. Okay, I'm also going to actually make a new one and put our token in there. Python 3, GCP perm checker. And this is access token. And the project ID is grprod2. If you go back here, we can see grprod2. We can run this. And yeah, it does take some time. So let's go here. And yeah. And although this is going to start brute forcing all the permissions, eventually in a few seconds, we're going to see that it's a huge outcome and quite big. So, yeah, just let this run. Yeah, that's a lot of permissions. You know, it's going to be quite difficult to actually sort this out. So what we can do is we can try to get the policy attached to grprod2 and see what we can find for our users specifically. We're using the access token file, token.txt, which I just made. And we can see we have the POS role testing, the cloud asset viewer, and the HMAC key admin roles. Let's go ahead and try to describe the POS role testing because this seems unique and not by default. And we notice we don't have actually permissions to find information about this specific role. So what we do notice is that we do have this HMAC key permission over here, which allows us to create this allows us to delete and create HMAC keys for all identities in the project. So GCP HMAC keys consist of an access key and secret access key and are only used to authenticate requests to cloud storage. So because it's only allowed for cloud storage, it would make sense for us to find a user that has permissions to access things in the buckets. You know, if you can access things in the bucket, it makes sense to create HMAC keys for it, because then we can actually use that user's permission. And if we don't know how to find service accounts or any other user that has those permissions, we can just check the policy over here, because we will notice that other users do exist. So what we're going to do now is remove. Let me check if it's actually saved here. No, the command's not saved. All right then. And there we go. We have quite a lot of things. So what we're trying to look for is a user that can access buckets in the objects or any types of bucket permissions. Nothing here. Nope. That's strange. Let me go back and see it again. No, no. Right over here, it says role storage dot object viewer. And this is the user that can access objects in the bucket. So yeah, we have our user now. We can also double check if this user has any other permissions as well. So we can go here and change this command and use that user's email instead. And yeah, it only has this permission. So it is going to be useful, which we can get some type of objects inside the bucket. Unfortunately, this role over here does not come with the ability to list buckets. So we need to find out whether we can list buckets or find out the buckets, you know, if there is any that exists. If we go back over here and do our own users permissions, we notice that we have the cloud asset dot viewer, and this role specifically allows us to run the asset search all resources permission. Um, so yeah, this permission is included. Okay, so specifically to run this command over here, gcloud asset search all resources, and I'm gonna get to the reason why we're trying to use this command. But this permission over, or to run this command, the specific permission you need is this permission over here. And this permission is given in this role over here, which we do have access to. So yeah, um, that is pretty much it. So we can go ahead and copy this. And it's searching for non-deleted resources. And yeah, we get a lot of output over here. And specifically what we do get is the asset type and the name of it, right? So the reason why we're trying to do this is we're trying to see if we can find any buckets that exist. And if we can find the bucket name that exists, a specific bucket name, we can then use this user to actually get things or objects inside that bucket. Since we can't list the buckets, right? We don't have permissions to list the buckets. If we can search all resources and we find a bucket name, we can then use this permission over here to view objects inside that bucket with this user. So um, yeah, that is pretty much it. Now, this is a lot of things to look through and to find a bucket over here. Yeah, it's quite a lot to look through. So what I did was I made another command from ChatGPT and I organized it quite decently. So I'm going to use that instead. And we can see that it organized buckets over here, and there's a couple of buckets that exist. This one, this one, this one, this one, and so on. And this specific bucket is meant for functions, and we're going to get to that in a bit. And if we go up over here, we have log buckets, we have service account key, service account, we got roles, database, and we do have functions as well. This export sales to GSC, which can contain some sensitive information. So a thing to note over here is that, oops, I guess I didn't put it here, but pretty much every time you create a function, a bucket is going to be created in this format where it's going to have the project ID here and the region. So if you do look at the function that we just saw, cloud function, we see that the region is US Central 1. And yeah, that is pretty much it. And the project ID, you can just see over here that it's all the same. And yeah, we have the project, oops, let's go all the way down. We have the project ID and we have the region name. So it's pretty much for that function over there. Let's go ahead and try to describe this function to see if it has any information in it. And we're unable to do that. We can also just double check if we are able to list the buckets or not, because that's one of the permissions. Or we need to find out the buckets. Well, we did find out through the other command. But we can also try directly to find out any buckets if we can list them. And yeah, we are unable to do that. It's just another reason why we use the other command over here. This command, gcloud asset search all resources. Probably should have done this before I did this command, but yeah, same point. We can see if we're able to list specific objects in the bucket. And obviously we're not able to do that. So let's go ahead and try to create a key for our user that we found that does have that permission. So storage, HMAC, create inventory. This is the user. And yeah, project and the access token for our user. And we have an access ID and a secret ID over here. So now we can use gsutil config-a. Oops. Cannot backup existing. Let's go ahead and remove this. Now, what is your Google Access Key ID? Let's paste this in here, and secret ID over here. Now, to make sure this gsutil specifically uses these HMAC credentials, we have to run this command here. And there we go. We can see if our user can actually list the buckets. And we should not be able to because of our permission specifically only allows us to get the objects inside the bucket, right? Project ID. Okay. Incorrect options. Okay, strange. Okay, I guess I have to do a bit of setting change on this, but nevertheless, let's just leave it for now and get to the actual part of this. So we did find all those buckets from the other command. And we can go ahead and try to use gsutil and see what's in those buckets. So we can go ahead and try this one over here. And we notice that the flag.txt is right here. And we can obviously just get that command or get that flag by using this command here. We can also check other buckets as well, since that permission allows us, or we have all these buckets that we can try, So we can try this now as well. GR inventory storage. And we notice this exists over here. So yeah, that is pretty much it. We wouldn't be able to list the buckets anyways, because that's not what our permission allows. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. And yeah, hopefully you guys learned something. It was pretty fun. This one was actually enjoyable. So yeah, take care, and I'll see you for the next video.